Haas entered the 2016 Formula 1 season as the 11th team on the grid. The team would enter the VF16, built by Italian manufacturer Dallara on behalf of the team, and using a fair amount of Ferrari components, including their engines. The VF16 would be driven by former Lotus driver Romain Grosjean and former Sauber driver Esteban Gutierrez. The car would score points on its competitive debut in the Australian Grand Prix, with Grosjean bringing the car home in 6th, much to his joy over the radio. He would then one-up that performance in the following round in Bahrain by finishing 5th, but that would prove to be the highlight of the team's season. Points finishes would be hard to come by for the remainder of the season, and Gutierrez didn't score at all. The car also had some technical issues, particularly with its brakes, causing a retirement in Malaysia and forcing Grosjean to miss out the Singapore Grand Prix. Despite this, it was a good debut season for Haas, as they scored more than enough points to finish 8th in the Constructors' Championship.
Best lap so far is a 1:41.7.
Romain Grosjean would continue to drive for Haas in the 2017 season, and he would be partnered by Kevin Magnussen to drive the VF17. The car was decked out in a rather flat battleship grey livery, and originally started the season with red accents, though these would later be changed to white. The season did not start well for Haas, as they suffered a double retirement in the opening round of Australia. After this, however, the team would have a solid, if unremarkable, season, with both drivers scoring several points, though Grosjean would score more frequently than Magnussen. The VF17's pace would dry up somewhat as the season progressed, though it was still capable of the occasional points finish. The team managed to achieve 47 points across the season, which was once again enough for 8th in the Constructors' Championship, meaning they were never under any significant threat from 9th placed McLaren, but never strong enough to overtake 7th placed Toro Rosso. The Haas VF18 would continue to be driven by Romain Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen, as well as using the same low-cost model to use as many Ferrari components as possible, which earned some controversy as the car had a striking resemblance to the previous year's Ferrari. The season would get off to a terrible start for Haas, as although they had been running in 4th and 5th in the opening round in Australia, both cars would ultimately retire after suffering the exact same pit stop error. To paraphrase team principal Günther Steiner, if they had managed to finish 4th and 5th, they would have looked like a bunch of rock stars. Instead, they looked like a bunch of wankers. The result would severely affect Grosjean's form, and he wouldn't score any points until he finally finished 4th in Austria. Magnussen, meanwhile, would score much more frequently, and the team would find themselves fighting for 4th in the Constructors' Championship, primarily against Renault. Ultimately, however, their bid would fail, primarily due to 2 disqualifications that cost them 10 points. meaning they would ultimately finish their most competitive season in F1 to date in 5th place in the Constructors with 93 points. The Haas VF19 will take on a rather familiar colour scheme for the 2019 season, the black and gold reminiscent of the John Player Special Lotus days, though this time it was the colours of the scam sponsor Rich Energy, which is a tale all to itself. The VF19 was a car that had very good one-lap pace due to its ability to heat its tyres very quickly. Unfortunately, this would lead to extremely poor race pace, as this ability to heat the tyres quickly led to chronic overheating. The team would struggle to correct these issues the entire season, and ultimately would fail to do so, with the drivers running different specifications each weekend. The drivers would also come to blows, leading to a double retirement at the British Grand Prix, and the subsequent scolding they got from Günther Steiner led to Magnussen Fox smashing his door. The team's best result of the season would come at the German Grand Prix, where they would finish 7th and 8th, though this was courtesy of the Alfa Romeos, receiving 30-second penalties. Ultimately, Haas could only score 28 points, which was only enough for 9th in the Constructors. The Haas VF20 was an evolution of the VF19, as 2020 was expected to be the final season of the 2017 regulations. As such, the VF20 suffered from very similar consistency issues as to its predecessor, on one occasion being 2 seconds slower in the Grand Prix than the first practice session just 2 days earlier. Coupled with the nerfed Ferrari power units, this meant that the VF20 was only able to score a grand total of 3 points across the season, which was only enough to finish 9th in the Constructors, ahead only of the pointless Williams. Whilst the VF20's competitive career was far from remarkable, it did go on to show just how far Formula 1 safety has come in just the past decade, when Romain Grosjean suffered a terrifying and fiery crash at the Bahrain Grand Prix, only to walk away with only minor burns. The charred remains of his car have been preserved as a testament to Formula 1 safety. Derived from the VF20, which was already meant to be a stopgap solution which would see very little development, the VF21 would see even less development for the 2021 season, when the 2020 chassis was forced to compete for another season. Already uncompetitive, the one small upgrade that the VF21 received would be nowhere near enough to bring it even close to catching up to the back of the field. As such, at the hands of its 2 rookie drivers, Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin, the VF21 would be the first Haas to not score a single point, meaning Haas would finish 10th and last in the championship. The car was somewhat controversial, though not due to its competitiveness, or lack thereof, rather the fact that its livery was a prominent Russian flag, and the team is very much American, This due to the fact that Nikita Mazepin is Russian and son of a Russian oligarch. Mazepin would certainly leave his mark upon the team with a rather large repair bill due to his inability to actually drive, which would earn him the nickname Mazespin. The VF22 was originally going to be driven by Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin, and would retain the Uralkali sponsorship. However, during the first pre-season test, Russia invaded Ukraine, and Mazepin would be ejected from the team, along with Uralkali. In Mazepin's place, Kevin Magnussen would be brought back to the team, and he would make his mark, driving as if he'd never left, and finishing 5th in the season opener. The VF22 would be a moderately successful car, picking up points on occasion, with a reasonably successful streak of 2 races in the middle of the season, where it would achieve double points finishes in both the British and Austrian Grand Prix. The team would have a close championship battle for 8th in the Constructors with AlphaTauri, and would ultimately come out on top by just 2 points. The team would also manage to achieve its very first pole position in Formula 1, at the hands of Kevin Magnussen, when George Russell beached his Mercedes during qualifying for the Brazilian Grand Prix, and the wet weather prevented his lap from being usurped. Unfortunately for Haas, they would also rack up a fair repair bill at the hands of Schumacher, who would crash heavily several times during the season. Mick Schumacher would be replaced by the experienced Nico Hülkenberg for 2023, partnering Kevin Magnussen to drive the VF23, a partnership that some expected to not work owing to their past history of sucking each other's balls. The VF23 would be the first Haas to feature a largely black livery since 2019, and it would have a new title sponsor, MoneyGram. Unfortunately for the team, 2023 would be a very difficult season for Haas, as they would once again slump to the lows of 10th place in the Constructors' Championship, despite scoring 12 points. The team had been largely outdeveloped by its rivals, with Williams shooting up to 8th place, and Alfa Romeo, despite not being as fast as they were in 2022, clearly still being fast enough to finish ahead, even if by just 4 points. The VF23 appeared to be a return to Haas's form from 2019 to 21, with the team struggling with consistency and overheating of their tyres. The VF23 was yet again a decent qualifying performer, but in the race it simply couldn't hold on to results. No matter how many upgrades the team would bring to the car, it simply wouldn't improve its race performance. And although it wasn't impossible for the team to finish 9th in the Constructors, by the time the Sao Paulo Grand Prix rolled around, they had all but accepted their fate, and that they would finish 10th for the second time in the last 3 seasons. The team's owner, Gene Haas, was finally fed up, and he started making some critical decisions with the team, which would ultimately lead to the sacking of the team's very popular team principal Günther Steiner, whose leadership style seemed to be one of the root causes of the team's issues. Things had to change for 2024. Ayao Komatsu would lead Haas into the 2024 season, with Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg remaining to drive the VF24. The VF24 proved to be a far better car than its predecessor, finally seeming to do away with the consistency issues that had been plaguing Haas since 2019, the car being much more gentle on its tyres. And while it wasn't exactly the star of the field, the VF24 was nonetheless a consistent enough performer that it would find itself fighting for 6th place in the Constructors' Championship, a position it looked set to keep until the Sao Paulo Grand Prix rolled around and gave Alpine a double podium that it simply didn't deserve. The car was still nonetheless a solid performer, and the team would finish 7th in the Constructors' Championship. Although the car endured a solid if unremarkable season, the team did have its share of issues across the season. Magnussen would pick up 12 penalty points and pick up a race ban, requiring him to be replaced by star rookie driver Ollie Behrman, who the team had already selected to drive for them for 2025. Behrman would drive for the team a second time at the Sao Paulo Grand Prix when Magnussen became unwell, and at the same event Hülkenberg would be disqualified for receiving outside assistance after beaching his car and then being pushed back onto the track by marshals. The team's most tense moment, however, would come at the Dutch Grand Prix, when Dutch police and bailiffs entered the paddock to evaluate Haas's assets to potentially seize to repay the former title sponsors Uralkali, whose sponsorship of Haas had terminated 2 years prior due to, Russia. This situation would eventually be resolved, with Haas repaying Uralkali, and the team would be allowed to continue on its way to Italy with their wallets $9 million lighter. 2024 was a solid season for Haas, and things are looking bright for their future should things continue this way. The team will have 2 new drivers for 2025, Esteban Ocon and Oliver Behrman, and a new technical partnership with Toyota Gazoo Racing, who may well be exploring a potential full-time return to Formula 1. And with Günther Steiner out of the picture and Komatsu in command, Haas may very well become a force to be reckoned with.